It's finally time to showcase the second act of Pale Moon's infamous circus show.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to finally the next deck profile for Vilest Deletor, and this time we're gonna cover the long-awaited second Pale Moon deck profile that's all about the new build that we can make with Gun Salute Dragon. And this is a very interesting build indeed, as it's completely different than we have seen before, where Pale Moon is doing basically multi-attacking with the utility aspect of their soul and gaining new attacks and combos while having specific units in their soul. This new build with Gun Salute is doing none of that. It's basically all about pressuring with your Vanguard attack, with a restanding Vanguard, all the crits in your deck, and basically denying your opponent any time of rest because you have such an enormous pressure from your Vanguard, and here and there you do some interesting things with your rear guards, as the main focus about this deck is emptying out your soul so you can use your Vanguard skill. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at how we can build a deck focused completely around Gun Salute Dragon end of stage and see how we can make work of that card. For this Pale Moon deck list, we run a total of 9 grade 3s, 12 grade 2s, 12 grade 1s and 17 grade 0s. Without big surprise, our main boss monster, Gun Salute Dragon end of stage, is a total of 4 copies included in this deck list. And that's because this card is our main pressure card and it allows us to have some insane power attacks with our Vanguard, as well as the potential of a Sentinel restriction, and with the crits in this deck makes it a very threatening Vanguard attack that can restand. Then for the supporting grade 3s, we run 3 copies of Golden Beast Tamer. This deck doesn't really have any multi-attack potential, but with Golden Beast Tamer we can have an upset turn for Gun Salute Dragon with some early game pressure, and then finishing off with a powerful attack the turn after that, with hopefully our opponent at 4 or 5 damage. And lastly, we run 2 copies of Artilleryman. This is a great card that allows us not only support our end of stage, but also the fact that we can have some very powerful high numbered attacks, as seen as this deck isn't really about multi-attacking. For the grade 2s, we run 4 copies of Misdirection. This card allows us to have some cycling going on in our hand, as well as soul charging up to a higher number. We're not really looking for specific cards into our soul, but mostly about higher soul counts, so our Artilleryman is a lot stronger, as well as maybe some good interaction with other cards. We also run 4 copies of Dancing Prince of Night Sky. As seen as we're not really multi-attacking a lot, we want to have as much attacks as early as possible, and this card enables that, as we can also empty our soul very effectively and generate more attacks at the same time, so it synergizes really well with end of stage. And lastly, we run 4 copies of Trihex Chimera. This is an amazing card that synergizes really well with end of stage, as it allows us to empty our soul, but at the same time generate a new rearguard onto the field with a little bit extra power, so it can beat over any kind of Vanguard. For grade 1s, we run 4 copies of Brassie Bunny. This is a great card that allows us to cycle through our deck, as well as have some extra soul charge options to fuel cards like Trihex Chimera or Artilleryman himself. Then we also run 4 copies of Starting Presenter. We run them for basically the same reasons as in any other deck, as it allows us to set up our soul as well as some higher counts, and potentially have some great multi-attacking with higher grade numbers than we should have access at the time when we're using its skill. And lastly, we run 4 copies of Purple Trapezist. This allows us to have some multi-attacking going on when we use Gun Salute Dragon's recent skill, as we can then immediately call some extra units out. Artilleryman is a good example that allows us to have some high attacks going on for multiple attacks. And for grade 0s, we of course run the generic starter, and for the trigger lineup, we run 4 heals, 8 crits and 4 draw PGs, making a total of 9 grade 3s, 12 grade 2s, 12 grade 1s and 17 grade 0s. This deck has a few interesting combos in its arsenal, and each fills its own role in a certain strategy. In this part I will explain how you can do them and what general purpose they fulfill, but later in the video I will explain how you can use them to their full potential. First off, the Starting Presenter combos. We have an interesting combo between Starting Presenter and Misdirection, and also between Starting Presenter and Dancing Princess of the Night Sky. Starting Presenter Misdirection is a great combo to set up your soul with either important key pieces or just to ramp up our soul numbers. To do this combo, it's very easy. You just write Misdirection on top of Starting Presenter with at least a grade 1 or 0 rearguard on the field. You use Starting Presenter skill first to soul charge and then call the soul charge unit. Then you use misdirection skill to put a grade 1 or lower into the soul and put some other key cards in the soul as well. What's great about this combo is the fact that your starting presenter will always hit a good target. In the past, when you soul charged a trigger or a low powered grade 1, you didn't really want to call that card. However, you can now use that card as a cost for misdirection, meaning starting presenter becomes a way more consistent card. Next up is Dancing Princess of the Night Sky, where misdirection is a soul setup combo. This is the exact opposite. It empties the soul as well as putting a full field onto the board. When you ride Dancing Princess on top of starting presenter, you can resolve the skill of presenter first, add a strong grade 2 or grade 3 card to the soul, and then soul charge a card and call it out if you're lucky it's a strong attacker. Then you resolve Dancing Princess skill to call out the card you just put into the soul with starting presenter. This way you can create a full field and potentially call 1 or 2 grade 3s to the field on turn 2. Late game, you can make a powerful swing turn if you combine end of stage with purple Trapezist and Artilleryman. This way you can attack multiple times with high numbers before you even attack with the Vanguard, and after you use the Vanguard skill, you can use purple Trapezist to call out the Artilleryman once again to attack for another powerful attack. And you can combine purple Trapezist with other units to have even more multi-attacking potential. Resource management in this deck is completely different than any other deck we've seen so far in Vanguard. You have cards that use Counterblast, but most of them aren't really for relevancy. In fact, what you want to achieve is to empty out your soul as much as possible, in the case where you want to ride end of stage and use its skill. It's very important to know the soul economy of all the cards, to get the idea to empty the soul the most effective way. First off, the grade 3s. End of stage will always empty the soul when you ride it on top of a grade 3, so keep that in mind when proceeding your turns. Artilleryman can empty the soul when its attack hits and you don't want to pay the counterblast. Most cases you don't want to pay the cost, so you will empty the soul right then and there. Golden Beast Tamer isn't really relevant in this discussion because if you go to end of stage after Golden Beast Tamer, the soul is empty anyways. For grade 2s, Misdirection is a +2 on soul for a counterblast and a rearguard, but she also pluses 1 on hand. Dancing Princess of Night Sky is a -2 on soul for a counterblast because she also calls units from the soul, but she also needs the Soul Blaster card. Trihex Chimera is a -3 on soul because it Soul Blasts 2 cards and it calls itself from the soul. For grade 1s you have starting presenter that can be a +1 or a +2 on soul depending on the scenario and which skill you're using. Brassie Bunny is a +2 on the soul, and Purple Trapezist is a -2 because she Soul Blasts herself and calls something from the soul. Learn to chain these cards the right way to get the max potential out of all the cards in this deck. This can either be a net 0 soul for turn 1 end of stage, or a powerful Artilleryman attack. As hinted earlier in the video, this deck can be played in many different ways, and now it's time to explain how. You can go for a soul charge game where you ramp up the soul as high as possible, or you can go for a net 0 soul game plan. If you go for the soul ramp game plan, you want to ride into starting presenter and then into misdirection. This can generate a +3 on soul as well as a +0 on hand, as seen as misdirection can neutralize the -1 from starting presenter. You can use Brassie Bunny, other starting presenters and misdirections to pump up the numbers even higher. Then after a setup you have 2 game plan options. One, you can go for a middle multi-attack first grade 3 turn with Golden Beast Tamer. You can attack for 4 to 6 times and maybe even call out some powerful Artillerymans, as seen as your soul isn't relevant anymore after this point. And after that pressure turn, you can go into a gun salute and try to overpower with a restanding guard restrict Vanguard. The other option is to go into a gun salute and call your Artillerymans to the field. Your opponent is forced to guard your powerful Artillerymans that are probably around 30 to 40k at this point. If not, they will have to deal with a restanding Vanguard. If you want to go for a net 0 soul game plan, then you can go into a very aggressive Dancing Princess grade 2 turn, which will call 2 units if ridden up top of starting presenter. Or you can ride into a Trihex Chimera, and when you ride into Gun Salute, you can use Trihex to call it out and empty your soul right then. If you want to ride Gun Salute as your first ride target, but you can't get the net 0 soul game plan going on at your grade 3 turn, then try to aim for an Artilleryman route, as that can help you either to achieve an empty soul or in the very least, it forces a lot from your opponent's hand. Trihex Chimera is one of your most valuable cards, as in combination with Gun Salute, it can enable a restand and a rearguard turn after turn without needing to rewrite Gun Salute. So don't waste these cards. For alternative options, you can try the craziest of things. Gun Salute is a deck that allows for a lot of experimentations. You can try to add LS in for some extra multi-attacking. You can also try to use Tricky Assistant as a support grade 3 as you get something out of your rewrite from Gun Salute. However, not having an Accel marker might be an issue. Another card that you can run is Barbarous Chimera, as it allows you to enter your soul even better and generate some units as well. I recommend not running fronts in this deck, as seen as you aren't really multi-attacking a lot, and also the fact that your Vanguard restands with a guard restrict is somewhat that synergizes very well with crits. We've seen a complete new Pale Moon deck that, unlike previous builds, isn't focused around multi-attacking from the soul, but more about soul management, as we've seen with Gear Chronicles Bind Zone mechanic. This gives a whole new depth to the deck, and with a powerful card like Gun Salute that can potentially restand on a grade 2 Vanguard, means this deck might be here to stay. And with that, we conclude this new Pale Moon Gun Salute deck profile. As you have seen, it's a very interesting approach to the whole Pale Moon mechanic, as instead of multi-attacking from the soul, it's more about managing your soul in a specific way where you want to have either empty it out as clearly as possible and as fast to 0 cards, or have a high enough number that your Artilleryman is unguardable and they are forced to take that attack and then have to deal with a restanding Vanguard. But that's about everything for this deck profile. Leave in the comments down below what you think of this new Pale Moon Gun Salute build and what your options are for this specific deck. As stated before, there are a lot of different things that you can try to make this deck work. For those who are waiting for the new Murakumo deck profile, don't worry, it's will be up hopefully tomorrow or at least in the next coming days, as well as a combined video of the upgraded Golden Beast Tamer and Zanbaku build, as those decks aren't really changing a lot, but I will do them in one video, so the ones that are interesting for that will have their fix. And expect that video also coming in the upcoming days, as I'm still doing that, so don't worry, it's coming, it's on its way, but it takes some time to make the videos. But making these videos all possible by you guys, as well as my amazing supporters over at Patreon, Priest and John Edmondson. I want to thank you guys for sticking around and helping me doing my part. If you guys want to support me on Patreon as well, then you know where to go. Go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and becoming a Patreon today. But as always, guys, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one.